I don't even know where to start. This feels surreal, like I'm narrating someone else's nightmare, but it's mine, all mine. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 7 years. 7 years of what I thought was a solid marriage. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always believed we were strong enough to weather any storm. Apparently, I was the only one who thought that. It started as an ordinary Thursday night. I had planned to head straight home after work, but a last-minute meeting ran long. By the time I left the office, I was exhausted and starving. Instead of going home to heat up leftovers, I decided to stop by a small downtown bar I hadn't been to in years. It wasn't one of our usual spots, which, as I'd soon find out, might have been the reason Emily felt safe there. The moment I walked in, the warm hum of chatter, clinking glasses, and faint music enveloped me. I didn't even have a reason to suspect anything. The thought that my wife could be here, of all places, didn't cross my mind. But as I glanced around, something caught my eye. Someone. Actually, Emily. She was sitting in a booth near the back, her shoulders angled toward a man I didn't recognize. Her laugh, that laugh I used to adore, rang out across the room, but it wasn't for me. It was for him. My legs froze mid-step, and my mind raced to make sense of what I was seeing. Was it an innocent meeting? A coincidence? Emily had never been great at surprises, but this would have been a hell of a setup if it were for me. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably just seconds, watching as the man leaned closer to her. He placed his hand on hers, and she didn't pull away. In fact, she leaned in, whispering something that made him grin. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't the type to create a scene or jump to conclusions, but in that moment, every instinct screamed at me that this wasn't innocent. I walked straight to their table. My footsteps must have been louder than I thought, because Emily's head whipped around before I even reached them. Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "David," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the noise of the bar. The man, on the other hand, had the audacity to look annoyed, as if I were interrupting something. His expression turned smug as he leaned back, crossing his arms like he was waiting for me to explain myself. I didn't. Instead, I reached for my wedding ring. My hand shook as I slid it off, but I gripped it tightly, feeling the weight of what it symbolized. 7 years. 7 years of love, trust, loyalty, gone. "Here," I said, my voice surprisingly calm as I extended my hand. "You'll probably need this more than I do." Emily's eyes widened as I dropped the ring in front of her. It clinked against the table, the sound sharp and final. "David, it's not what it looks like," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "It never is it?" I replied, my tone colder than I thought possible. "You always have an excuse, don't you, Emily? But I'm done listening." I turned and walked away before she could say another word. I didn't trust myself to stay. My hands were shaking, my chest felt like it was going to cave in, and my mind was racing with 1,000 questions I wasn't ready to ask. That night, I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind replaying the scene in the bar over and over again. The way she smiled at him, the way she didn't flinch when he touched her, the way her face crumbled when she saw me like a child caught red-handed. When I finally stopped, I was parked outside a cheap motel on the edge of town. I checked in without a second thought and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank TV screen. My phone buzzed repeatedly with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. I couldn't face her, not yet. All I knew was that the life I thought I had was over, shattered in the blink of an eye. And the worst part? I didn't even know how deep the betrayal went yet, but I was going to find out. I woke up in that dingy motel room with a pounding headache and a heavy weight on my chest. Sleep had done nothing to dull the ache inside me. The events from the night before came rushing back like a freight train, and I felt sick to my stomach. Emily's face, her startled expression, was burned into my mind. I checked my phone. 15 missed calls, 12 texts, all from her. Each message was a mix of apologies and frantic explanations. "David, please let me explain. It's not what you think. You're overreacting. Call me back." Overreacting? The nerve of her. My blood boiled just reading that. I slammed the phone down on the bedside table and stared at the cracked ceiling. I knew I couldn't avoid her forever, but I wasn't ready to face her yet, not without answers. By mid-morning, I decided to head home, not because I wanted to see Emily, but because I needed to know if she was still there. Part of me feared she'd packed up and left, taking the life we'd built with her. Another part of me hoped she had. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was parked out front. The sight of it made my stomach churn. I sat in the car for a moment, trying to steady my nerves before going inside. As I opened the front door, the smell of coffee hit me. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, her hair a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. "David," she said, her voice soft and tentative. I ignored her and walked straight to the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water. I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't look at her. "David, can we talk?" she tried again. I finally turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Talk? Sure, let's talk. Why don't you start by telling me who that guy was?" She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "He's just a friend. We were catching up, that's all." I laughed bitterly. "Just a friend? Is that what friends do? Hold hands in a dark corner of a bar and whisper things that make each other smile like that?" She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "It's not what you think," she muttered. "Then tell me what it is, Emily," because from where I was standing, it looked pretty damn clear. Her silence was deafening. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but closed it again, like she was searching for the right words. That hesitation was all the confirmation I needed. "I trusted you," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "For 7 years, I gave you everything I had, and this is what I get in return." "It's not like that," she cried, standing up suddenly. "David, I love you." It was just a moment of weakness. I shook my head, my hands clenched into fists. "Weakness? That's what you call it." "I call it betrayal." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy, not this time. "You need to tell me everything, Emily," I said firmly. "No more lies. Who is he? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated again, her lip quivering. "It was just one night," she whispered. It didn't mean anything, but I didn't believe her. The way she had looked at him, the way she had touched his hand, it wasn't the kind of connection you form in just one night. There was more to the story, and I was determined to uncover every last detail. And so the interrogation began. Her confession was just the tip of the iceberg. I could feel it. My instincts told me there was far more she wasn't saying. But Emily, always the master of deflection, just stood there trembling, her hands twisting together like she was the victim in all this. "One night," I repeated, my voice low and steady. "Just one night, huh? Then why did it look so comfortable? The way you laughed, the way you let him touch you. Does that happen overnight?" She swallowed hard, tears welling up again, but she didn't answer. Instead, she sank back into the chair, burying her face in her hands. "I'm done with the tears, Emily," I said coldly. "They're not going to work this time. You either come clean now, or I'm walking out that door, and I'm not coming back." Her head shot up at that, panic flashing across her face. "David, please don't say that," she pleaded. "I don't want to lose you." "Then start talking," I snapped. She took a deep, shaky breath, wiping her face. "His name is Mike," she admitted finally. "We met at the gym. He's a trainer there." The gym, of course. She had been spending an unusual amount of time there lately, always going on about how she wanted to focus on herself and get stronger. I should have seen the signs, but I chalked it up to a phase, something harmless. How blind could I have been? "How long?" I demanded. She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. "A few months," she whispered. "A few months." I repeated the words like poison on my tongue. "So it wasn't just one night, was it?" She shook her head, fresh tears streaming down her face. "No, but I swear, David, it didn't mean anything. It was just, I don't know, I was lonely, okay? You've been so busy with work, and I felt like you weren't paying attention to me anymore." I let out a bitter laugh. "So this is my fault now? You felt lonely, so instead of talking to me, your husband, you decided to hook up with your gym trainer?" "It wasn't like that," she shouted, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." "Things like this don't just happen, Emily," I shot back. "You made a choice, over and over again, for months. Don't stand there and act like you're some helpless victim." She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands, but I wasn't moved. Her tears were nothing more than the result of being caught, not remorse. I leaned against the counter, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. "Does he know you're married?" I asked after a moment. "Yes," she mumbled through her tears. "Of course he did." That smug look on his face at the bar suddenly made perfect sense. He knew exactly who I was, and he didn't care. And worse, neither did she. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice cold and detached. You're going to give me Mike's number, then you're going to pack a bag and leave this house. She looked up at me, horrified. What? David? No, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, or, no. Emily, I interrupted. You don't get to fix this. You already broke it. Now, give me his number, or I'll go down to that gym and get it myself. Her face crumbled at that, but she knew I wasn't bluffing. Slowly, she reached for her phone and typed his number into mine. I didn't say another word as I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. David, wait. Where are you going? She called after me. I paused, turning to face her one last time. To get some answers. And when I come back, you'd better be gone. I slammed the door behind me, the sound echoing through the quiet neighborhood. As I got into my car and drove away, I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and a strange, numb clarity. I didn't know what I was going to say to Mike, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The drive to the gym was a blur. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and my mind raced through 100 different scenarios of how this confrontation might play out. What kind of man openly pursues a married woman, knowing full well she has a husband? And what kind of coward sits there smugly when caught, as if he's untouchable? By the time I pulled into the gym parking lot, I was shaking, half from anger, half from adrenaline. It was late morning, and the gym was busy with the typical crowd of fitness enthusiasts and casuals trying to stick to their resolutions. I scanned the parking lot for a car that might stand out, but of course, Mike wasn't going to make this easy. I stepped inside, and the familiar smell of sweat and rubber hit me. The sound of weights clanging and upbeat music filled the air. A young receptionist at the front desk greeted me with a polite smile. Hi, welcome to Peak Fitness. How can I help you today? I'm looking for Mike, I said flatly. Her smile faltered slightly. Mike? Do you mean one of our trainers? Yes, I said, my tone clipped. Mike, tall guy, brown hair, thinks he's God's gift to women. Her face turned a shade of pink, and she quickly looked down at her computer. Let me check if he's in today. One moment. I leaned on the counter, tapping my fingers impatiently as she made a call on her headset. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but the way her eyes darted toward me told me she knew something. He's finishing up a session right now, she said after a moment. You can wait for him in the lounge area over there. Thanks, I muttered and walked away. The lounge area was small, just a few chairs and a coffee table with outdated fitness magazines. I didn't sit. Instead, I stood near the door leading to the training area, my heart pounding as I waited for him to show his face. After what felt like an eternity, he appeared. Mike. He was taller than I remembered, his athletic frame accentuated by his fitted gym uniform. He spotted me immediately, and his smug grin from the bar returned. David, right? He said casually, crossing his arms as he approached. I was wondering when you'd show up. The audacity of this man was almost comical. I clenched my fists, but I kept my voice steady. We need to talk. Talk, he said, raising an eyebrow. About what? Emily. Hearing her name from his mouth sent a fresh wave of anger through me, but I kept it in check. That's right, I said. About Emily. About why you think it's okay to screw around with another man's wife. Mike shrugged. Leaning against the wall like this was just another casual conversation. Look, man, I get it, you're upset. But it's not like I forced her into anything. Emily is a grown woman. She made her choice. Her choice. I repeated, my voice rising. Her choice was to break her vows and betray the man who's been by her side for 7 years. And you? You encouraged it. You're just as guilty as she is. Mike chuckled, shaking his head. You're taking this way too personally, man. Marriages fall apart all the time. It happens. Emily's been unhappy for a while. You just didn't notice. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Was that true? Had she been unhappy, and I was too blind to see it? But no, this wasn't on me. I wasn't the one sneaking around. You don't get to justify what you did by blaming me, I said through gritted teeth. You knew she was married, and you didn't care. That makes you a coward and a homewrecker. His smug expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. Look, David, I don't owe you an apology. Emily came to me. She wanted this. And you know what? I'm not sorry if she wasn't happy with you. That's not my problem. I stepped closer, my fists clenching at my sides. I wanted nothing more than to wipe that arrogant look off his face, but I knew better. Mike wasn't worth throwing my life away over. You think this is over? I said, my voice low and dangerous. You think you can just walk away from this like it's no big deal? You don't know me, Mike, but you're about to. Before he could respond, I turned and walked out of the gym, leaving him standing there, his smirk finally gone. As I got into my car, my mind raced with possibilities. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. Mike had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. But first, I needed to deal with Emily. She hadn't packed her bags yet, but that was about to change. And I had an idea of exactly how I was going to make it happen. By the time I got back home, I was seething. My conversation with Mike had only fueled the fire burning inside me. The arrogance in his voice, the way he tried to justify his actions, and worst of all, the way he made it sound like I was the one at fault. It was almost too much to handle. But I knew better than to let my anger control me. I needed to be methodical, strategic. When I stepped into the house, Emily was sitting on the couch, her phone clutched in her hands. She looked up as I entered, a mix of relief and fear. David, she began, standing up slowly. Thank God you're back. I was so worried. Save it. I interrupted, my voice cutting through her words like a knife. I talked to Mike. Her eyes widened, and she froze. You talked to him? That's right, I said, dropping my keys on the counter. And he didn't hold back. He told me everything, Emily. Every single thing. I hadn't planned a bluff, but the look of panic on her face told me it might work. Her lip quivered as she took a step back, her hands clutching the edge of the couch for support. David, I can explain, she stammered. Explain what? I snapped. Explain how you've been sneaking around behind my back for months? Explain how you've been spending your afternoons at the gym while I was at work, busting my ass to support us. She shook her head frantically, tears spilling down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I swear, David, it wasn't like that. Then what was it, Emily? I demanded, stepping closer. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you threw away 7 years of marriage for some cheap fling with a guy who doesn't even respect you enough to keep his mouth shut. Her face crumbled, and she sank back onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know why I did it, she sobbed. I was stupid, okay? I wasn't thinking. I never meant to hurt you. Never meant to hurt me. I repeated, my voice laced with bitterness. You didn't think sneaking around with Mike would hurt me? You didn't think I'd find out eventually? She didn't answer. Instead, she just sat there crying into her hands, as if her tears could somehow erase what she'd done. I crossed my arms, glaring down at her. Pack your bags, I said firmly. Her head shot up, her tear-streaked face pale. What? You heard me, I said. Pack your bags. You're leaving tonight. David, please, she begged, scrambling to her feet. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through this. There's no we. Emily, I interrupted. You made that decision when you chose Mike over me. I'm done. Her expression turned desperate as she reached for my arm. David, please, I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. Don't throw everything away over this. I pulled my arm away, my voice cold. You already threw it away, Emily. All I'm doing is taking out the trash. The words hit her like a slap, and for a moment she just stood there, staring at me in shock. Then, slowly, she turned and walked toward the bedroom. I followed her, leaning against the door frame as she opened the closet and began pulling out clothes. You know what the worst part is? I said, my voice soft but sharp. It's not just that you cheated. It's that you didn't even have the decency to hide it. You flaunted it, Emily. You brought him to a bar where anyone could see you, like you didn't care who found out. She didn't respond. She just kept packing, her hands trembling as she shoved clothes into a suitcase. When she was done, she turned to me, her eyes red and swollen. Where am I supposed to go? She asked quietly. Not my problem, I said, stepping aside to let her pass. She lingered for a moment, as if hoping I'd change my mind, but I didn't. Finally, she picked up her suitcase and walked to the front door. As she stepped outside, she turned back to look at me one last time. I'm sorry, David, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't respond. I just closed the door and locked it behind her. For the first time in what felt like forever, the house was silent. I leaned against the door, letting out a long, shaky breath. The reality of what had just happened hit me like a ton of bricks. My marriage was over. The life I thought I had was gone. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one more loose end to tie up, and it wasn't Emily. It was Mike. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The silence in the house was deafening after Emily left. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with the echoes of her betrayal. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, trying to wrap my head around everything that had just unfolded. My wife, no, my ex-wife, as far as I was concerned, was out of my life. But the damage she'd done still lingered, and Mike, that man wasn't off the hook yet. As I sat there, an idea began to form. Confronting him at the gym had been impulsive, and I regretted letting my emotions get the better of me. If I wanted real closure or justice, I needed to be smarter about this. Mike had made one thing clear. He didn't feel guilty, not one bit. He thought he'd won, but he hadn't. Not yet. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. It didn't take long to find him. Mike's social media accounts were as public as his ego, filled with shirtless gym selfies and motivational quotes that felt painfully shallow. But there was something else, something that made me pause. A post from just 2 days ago. Big things happening soon. Stay tuned. The caption was vague, but the photo accompanying it was of Mike standing in front of a grand opening banner at a new gym location. It didn't take a genius to figure out what he meant. He wasn't just a trainer. He was expanding, starting his own business. I sat back, a bitter smile creeping across my face. This was it. His Achilles heel. He wasn't just some sleazy trainer messing around with married women. He was trying to build a reputation, a career, and he picked the worst possible time to cross me. I spent the next few hours gathering information, reviews of his training sessions, mentions of him in local fitness blogs, even a few testimonials from clients. The more I read, the more obvious it became that Mike had a pattern, one that Emily had been too blind to see. I found comments from other women hinting at inappropriate behavior during sessions. Mike is hands-on, one review said, with a winking emoji. Another read, great trainer, but maybe too friendly. The implications were clear. Mike was a predator, using his charm and good looks to manipulate vulnerable clients. The more I uncovered, the more determined I became. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about exposing Mike for who he really was. A fraud, a liar, a homewrecker. By the time I closed my laptop, the clock had ticked past midnight. My plan was taking shape, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Tomorrow, I'd start putting it into action. The next morning, I woke up early, feeling more focused than I had in days. I made a list of everything I needed to do and started with the most important task, evidence. I called a private investigator I'd used years ago to vet a business partner. He was efficient, discreet, and ruthless, exactly what I needed. When I explained the situation, he didn't seem surprised. Guys like Mike are a dime a dozen, he said over the phone. I'll see what I can dig up. Give me a few days. Next, I contacted the owner of the gym where Mike worked. Emily had mentioned it once or twice, and I knew it was part of a larger chain. I framed my inquiry as a concerned spouse asking about a trainer's behavior. The woman I spoke to was polite but hesitant. We take these kinds of allegations very seriously, she said. Can you provide any specific examples? I'll send you everything I have, I promised. By noon, I had set the wheels in motion. Now it was a waiting game. 2 days later, the investigator called me back. You were right about Mike, he said, his tone grim. He's been doing this for years. I've got photos, texts, and even a recording of him bragging about hooking up with clients. The recording was the final piece of the puzzle. In it, Mike could be heard laughing with a friend, boasting about how easy it was to get close to married women. They're all bored and looking for excitement, he said. I just give them what they want. Hearing his voice made my blood boil, but it also solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. Mike needed to be exposed, not just to Emily, but to everyone who trusted him. I compiled everything into a neat little folder, screenshots, reviews, the recording, and a summary from the investigator. Then I sent it to the gym's corporate office, along with a strongly worded email demanding action. But I didn't stop there. I posted an anonymous review on Mike's new gym's page, detailing his behavior without naming names. Within hours, the post started gaining traction. Other women chimed in, sharing similar experiences, and soon the comment section was flooded with accusations. Mike's reputation was crumbling before my eyes, and I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. That evening, Emily called me. David, she said, her voice shaking. What did you do? What do you mean? I asked, feigning innocence. His career is falling apart, she said. He called me, freaking out. He thinks someone's targeting him. Maybe he should have thought about that before he went after another man's wife. I replied coldly. Emily was silent for a long moment. Was this really necessary? She finally asked. Was your affair necessary? I shot back. She had no response to that. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. Emily was gone, Mike was exposed, and I was finally taking back control of my life. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. There was still more to uncover, more to process, and I wasn't done yet. The next few days were a whirlwind. Mike's world was falling apart faster than I could have imagined. The post I made had gone viral, and the fallout was hitting him from all angles. His social media accounts turned into a battlefield, with people from all over commenting on his posts, calling him out for his behavior, and sharing their own stories. The gym where he worked had suspended him, pending an internal investigation. I later heard from the investigator that several former clients came forward to file formal complaints, detailing inappropriate comments, unwanted advances, and unprofessional behavior. The gym's management had no choice but to cut ties with him entirely. But the cherry on top? The opening of Mike's new gym was canceled. Sponsors pulled out, his business partners backed away, and the bank that had approved his loan reportedly rescinded the offer. His big dream had collapsed before it even got off the ground. I could only imagine the panic he was feeling. A guy like Mike, who built his life around his image, would crumble under the weight of public humiliation. And Emily? She had chosen the wrong guy to risk everything for. Meanwhile, my phone stayed silent. Emily hadn't called or texted again after that last conversation. I assumed she was lying low, probably dealing with the fallout from Mike's drama. A part of me wanted to feel pity for her. After all, she lost everything too. But every time I thought about her sitting in that bar, smiling at Mike like I didn't exist, the pity dissolved into cold indifference. One evening, as I was sorting through some paperwork, I came across the folder where I kept all of our shared finances. It hit me then. Our accounts were still linked. As much as I wanted to be rid of Emily, I wasn't about to let her drag me down financially. The next morning, I went straight to the bank. The clerk was helpful, guiding me through the process of separating our accounts and ensuring that Emily wouldn't have access to anything tied to my name. I also took the opportunity to change the passwords on all my online accounts and update my will, just to cover all my bases. By the time I left the bank, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was starting to take control of my life again. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor. I was sitting on the couch, nursing a beer and watching TV, when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I debated ignoring it. But the knocking continued, more insistent this time. I opened the door to find Emily standing on the porch, looking like a shadow of the woman I once knew. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red and swollen, and she was clutching a crumpled tissue in one hand. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, my tone cold. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. "No," I said firmly. "Say whatever you need to say right here." She hesitated, glancing nervously at the neighbors' houses before looking back at me. "David, I made a mistake," she said, her voice trembling. I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. "Yeah, you've made a lot of those lately. Which one are we talking about?" She winced at my words, but she pressed on. "I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything. But I miss you, I miss us. Can't we at least talk about this, about us?" I stared at her, incredulous. "You're kidding, right? You think we can just sit down and talk after everything you've done? After you lied to me, cheated on me, and humiliated me?" "I wasn't thinking clearly," she said, her voice breaking. "I was stupid and selfish, and I didn't realize what I was throwing away until it was too late." I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "Too late is right, Emily. You made your choice, and now you're dealing with the consequences. You don't get to come crawling back to me just because your little fling blew up in your face." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. "David, please," she begged. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you. I always have." I met her gaze, my expression unyielding. "Love doesn't look like what you did, Emily. Love doesn't betray, doesn't lie, doesn't destroy the person it's supposed to protect. You don't love me. You just don't want to be alone." Her shoulders slumped, and she let out a choked sob. For a moment, I thought she might try to argue, but instead, she turned and walked away, her suitcase dragging behind her. I closed the door, locking it firmly behind me. As I sat back down on the couch, I felt an overwhelming sense of finality. Then my phone rang. It was Mike. I stayed silent, my grip tightening on the phone. "Look, man, I know you're pissed, and you have every right to be," he continued, his voice desperate. "But you need to stop this. You've ruined my career, my business, everything I've worked for. I'm begging you, just let it go." The audacity of him calling me, asking for mercy after everything he'd done, made me laugh. "Let it go," I repeated. "You didn't think about letting it go when you were sneaking around with my wife, did you? You didn't think about the consequences when you made it your mission to destroy my marriage." "David, I made a mistake," he said, his voice strained. "But this, what you're doing, it's too much." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "You don't get to decide what's too much, Mike. You played with fire, and now you're getting burned. Don't call me again." I hung up before he could respond. Despite Mike's plea, I felt no guilt. He deserved every bit of what he was going through. But I didn't want to let him or Emily take up any more space in my life. They were my past, and I was determined to move forward. One evening, I decided to go back to the bar, the same bar where it all started. It felt like coming full circle, a way to reclaim the place that had been tainted by that night. I walked in, the familiar hum of conversation and music greeting me. I sat at the bar, ordered a drink, and let myself relax. As I sipped my beer, I noticed someone sitting a few stools away, a woman with a kind smile and an easy laugh. She caught my eye and raised her glass in a friendly gesture. I hesitated for a moment before smiling back. It wasn't much, just a small exchange between strangers, but it reminded me that life goes on, that even after betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, there's always the possibility of something new, something better. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt ready to take that first step. The scars from Emily's betrayal would always be there, but they didn't define me. I was stronger than the pain, stronger than the lies. This was my new beginning, and I wasn't looking back.